It's 7 a.m. The alarm has gone off 4 times, and standing up feels like lifting something far too heavy. Nothing's wrong on paper, but everything feels gray, slow, and strangely far away. You've wondered if you're lazy or weak or broken in some way you can't name. You're none of those, and the real reason is simpler and kinder than you think. The first thing to understand is that depression often doesn't look like what you'd expect. It isn't always crying or sadness or lying in a dark room unable to get up. For a lot of people, it shows up as nothing at all. A flatness, like the volume on life turned down. The things you used to love feel far away, and you go through the motions waiting to care again. Some days it's a tiredness that sleep never seems to fix, the kind that sits in your bones. Other days it's a short temper, snapping at the people you love over things that shouldn't matter. It's the dishes stacking up, the messages unread, the shower that somehow feels like climbing a hill. And under all of it runs a quiet question that follows you around. What is wrong with me? So before we go further, let me say the most important thing as plainly as I can. Nothing is wrong with you. What you feel has a name. It's far more common than you think, and it genuinely makes sense. It's one of the most common conditions in the world, which means you are far from alone in it. But to understand it, we have to start with the story you've almost certainly been told. Because that explanation, the one your doctor, your friends, and 100 adverts repeated, is mostly wrong. If you've ever asked why you feel this way, you've probably been given the same answer. Depression is a chemical imbalance. Your brain doesn't make enough serotonin, the chemical behind happiness. Imagine it like a fuel tank running low, and the right pill simply tops it back up. It's a clean, comforting explanation, and for a long time, nearly everyone believed it completely. To see why, you have to go back to the late 1980s when a new kind of pill arrived. It was called Prozac, the first of a family of drugs designed to raise serotonin in the brain. And alongside the pill came an explanation simple enough to understand in a single breath. Low serotonin makes you depressed. This medicine raises serotonin, so this medicine fixes depression. That message spread through clinics, television adverts, magazine pages, and eventually everyday conversation. And to be fair, it did something genuinely kind for people who were quietly suffering. It lifted the blame. So you could say, it isn't my fault, it's my chemistry. And finally, breathe. After centuries of calling sad people weak or lazy, that relief was real and well-deserved. But there's a quiet danger hidden inside a story that simple and that comforting. When everybody already agrees something is true, almost nobody stops to check whether it actually is. And for nearly 30 years, the serotonin story got repeated far more often than it got tested. Doctors believed it, patients believed it, and the adverts kept saying it with total confidence. Then a group of scientists finally decided to gather everything we knew and take a hard look. What they found would quietly pull the floor out from under the most famous idea in mental health. In 2022, a team of researchers did something that sounds obvious, but almost never happens. They gathered up the biggest, most careful reviews of the serotonin evidence from the last few decades. Then they asked one plain question. Is there real proof that low serotonin causes depression? They looked at the serotonin levels in people's bodies and found no reliable difference. They looked at the receptors it attaches to and the gene that helps control it. If the theory were true, a clear pattern should have shown up across all of that work. It didn't. After decades of repeating the story, the proof that low serotonin causes depression simply wasn't there. Now, this set off a real argument among scientists, and that argument is still going on today. But on the central point, the simple chemical imbalance story most of us were told doesn't hold up. And this is where I have to be careful, because the next part matters enormously. This does not mean antidepressants are useless or that what you feel on them isn't real. Millions of people genuinely feel better on medication, and that experience is valid and important. It may simply be that they help in a different way than we were originally told. Not by topping up a missing chemical, but by quieting the alarm and creating space to heal. For some people, especially in severe depression, they can be genuinely, even life-savingly important. So if you take medication, please don't stop because of a video. Coming off these drugs suddenly can be dangerous. It's a decision to make slowly with your doctor. The point isn't that the pills are wrong. It's that the story about why was incomplete. Because if depression isn't simply a broken brain, then the real question changes completely. It stops being what is wrong with my chemistry and becomes what is my mind responding to? And once you ask it that way, the real reasons finally start to make sense. So if depression isn't simply a broken brain, then what is it actually responding to? For a huge number of people, the first and biggest answer is disconnection from other people. To understand why, you have to remember what kind of creature a human really is. For almost all of our history, we survived in small, close groups, never truly alone. Being part of the group meant safety, and being cut off from it meant real danger. So your brain evolved to treat connection as survival and loneliness as a threat to your life. When you're isolated for a long time, that ancient alarm switches on quietly in the background. Your body stays a little tense, a little on guard, waiting for a closeness that never comes. And over months and years, living in that state slowly wears you down into a flat, low place. Here's the cruel part about the world we've built for ourselves lately. It strips away real connection while telling us we're more connected than ever before. We move away from family for work. We live alone. We trade close friends for glowing screens. We have hundreds of followers and almost no one to call at 2 a.m. And loneliness isn't only painful. It acts on the body like a chronic, low-grade stress. It's been linked to worse sleep, more inflammation, and a higher risk of depression itself. The hardest version is the loneliness you can feel in a room that's full of people. You can be married, surrounded by coworkers, buried in messages, and still feel completely unseen. Because depression often grows in that exact gap between being in contact and being truly known. If that lands a little too close, I want you to hear something clearly. You're not antisocial or broken or bad at life. You're a social animal running on empty. And the hope hidden inside this is that connection is also one of the fastest ways back. The second reason your mind might be pulling the volume down is almost the opposite problem. It isn't too little happening in your life. It's too much for far too long. Your body comes with a built-in alarm system, the one behind fight or flight. It was designed for short bursts. A threat appears, you react, and then you calm back down. A stressful morning, a close call, a hard conversation, and then the system switches back off. But look at the kind of stress we actually live with now, day after day. Money that never quite stretches, a job that never logs off, a phone that never stops buzzing. News built to frighten you, deadlines stacked on deadlines, people who depend on you completely. It's not one big threat anymore. It's a low hum of pressure that never fully goes quiet. And here's what happens when that alarm is left running for months instead of minutes. The stress chemicals that should rise and fall stay high, and your body never gets to recover. Eventually, to protect you, your system does the only thing it can. It starts shutting things down. Your energy drops, your motivation fades, your feelings go quiet, and everything starts to feel like too much. And that flat, exhausted, numb shutdown is a huge part of what depression actually feels like. It's why burnout and depression blur together, and why you genuinely can't just push through it. You're not failing at a normal life. You're coping heroically with a life that never lets you rest. Your body didn't break down because you're weak. It slowed down because it was trying to save you. The third reason is one we almost never name, and it hides in plain sight. A lot of depression is really grief for something you lost and were never allowed to fully feel. And grief is so much bigger than only losing someone you love to death. It's a breakup, a friendship that faded, a move away from everywhere that felt like home. It's a job, a dream, or the version of your life you were so sure you'd have by now. We're taught to grieve quickly and quietly, to be okay again within a week or two. So we swallow it, we stay busy, and we tell everyone that we're doing just fine. But grief that's never allowed out doesn't disappear. It sinks down and flattens everything above it. And there's a second kind of loss underneath that one, quieter still. It's the slow loss of meaning, a life that looks fine on paper, but doesn't feel like yours. You do what you're supposed to, you tick the boxes, and a part of you keeps asking, what for? When your days drift far from what actually matters to you, the mind answers with a kind of fog. That feeling that nothing's worth the effort can be your mind quietly asking what the point even is. So before you decide something is wrong with you, it's worth asking a gentler question instead. Are you broken? Or are you grieving something? Or living a life that was never really yours? Because those aren't chemical defects to be corrected. They're real losses that deserve to be felt. The fourth reason is the one people most love to ignore because it sounds too simple to matter. Your mind doesn't float above your body. It's built by it, fed by it, and dragged down by it. When the body underneath you is depleted, it will manufacture a low, heavy mood all on its own. Start with sleep, because almost nothing wrecks your mood faster than going without enough of it. Poor sleep and depression feed each other, and broken sleep alone can create many of the same symptoms. Then there's light, something we forget we ever needed until we stop getting it. We evolved under an enormous sky, and now we spend our days indoors and our nights lit by screens. Too little real daylight scrambles the inner clock that helps set your mood and your energy. It's part of why dark winters feel so heavy and why a gray week can quietly flatten you. Then movement. Your body was built to walk and lift and move through the world every day. When it sits still for months, mood sinks with it. And the research here is genuinely striking. For milder depression, regular movement can work about as well as medication for a lot of people. And finally, food. And the early signs that what you eat helps shape how you actually feel. The links between diet, the gut, inflammation, and mood are real, though scientists are still mapping them. Now put all four together and look honestly at what a genuinely hard year looks like. Barely sleeping, almost no daylight, no movement, eating whatever's fastest, of course you feel terrible. That is not weakness. That's your body responding, exactly as it should, to being run completely into the ground. And that's the thread tying all 4 reasons together. Not one of them is a broken brain. They're your mind and body reacting sensibly to your life, which means they can be changed. So if depression is your mind and body responding to your life, here's the hopeful part. A response can change, which means there are real things you can start doing today. Not a perfect 12-step plan you'll abandon by Thursday, just a few first moves that genuinely work. And before any of them, you have to understand the one rule that changes everything. You're waiting to feel motivated before you act. And that is exactly backwards. When you're depressed, motivation doesn't come first. It shows up after you start moving. So the whole game is to act before you feel like it, in the smallest possible way. You don't climb out with one huge change. You climb out with tiny actions you can't fail at. So let's make them concrete, starting with the simplest thing that hits the most causes at once. Tomorrow morning, step outside and walk for 5 minutes. That's it, just 5. You're giving your body movement, your eyes real daylight, and your stressed system a moment to settle. 3 of the 4 reasons we talked about softened a little by one short morning walk. Next, reach for one person in the smallest way you can manage today. Send a single text that says, "Thinking of you," or sit in a cafe just to be near people. You don't have to explain yourself or be good company. You only have to not be alone. Then protect your sleep like it's medicine, because for your brain, it genuinely is. Pick one wake-up time, dim the screens before bed, and let your body find its rhythm again. And here's the hardest one, the one we avoid the most. Stop telling everyone you're fine, and let one person hear the truth. Name the loss you never grieved, or the weight you've been carrying, out loud, to someone safe. What we keep in the dark keeps its power. Said gently to another person, it starts to loosen. Now there's a line I need to say clearly, and I mean it with my whole heart. If this is severe, if you can't function, or if you're thinking of ending your life, please reach out now. Talk to a doctor, call a crisis line, or tell someone you trust today, not someday. Therapy works. Medication helps many people. And asking for help isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing there is. You were never meant to white-knuckle this alone, and you genuinely don't have to. So let's go back to that heavy morning, the one we started with. You're not lazy, you're not weak, and you're not broken in some way that can't be mended. You're a person responding, completely understandably, to disconnection, stress, loss, and a depleted body. And every single one of those is something that can slowly, genuinely change. You don't have to believe me yet, and you don't have to do all of it. You just have to do one small thing. So pick the smallest, a short walk, a single text, an early night, one honest sentence, and do it today. Because you were never broken. You just finally heard the real reason why.